so our next method is called completing the square. For completing the square, we use a short little formula. It is b divided by 2 squared. And remember, b is ax squared plus bx, right? That's a 6, but in general, our quadratic formula, or not formula, but our quadratic equation is ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. And this number right here, b divided by 2 and squared, we got to use that formula. First of all, we're going to get rid of our c. We're going to replace it with a new c, because what we're trying to create with this is a trinomial square. Remember, we talked about them first and last terms are squares. So we're going to get rid of the 5 because it's not a square. So I'm going to say x squared plus 6x equals a negative 5. I'm just going to move that over. Now my 6 is my b, right? So I'm going to say 6 divided by 2 squared. 6 divided by 2 is 3 squared equals a 9. Now I'm going to put that plus 9. Whatever I do to one side, I got to do to the other in both places. Okay? So I got rid of my c because it wasn't a square. And I'm trying to create that trinomial square. Remember, we talked about those. First term is a square. Last term is a square. Square root is 3. Square root is x. And 2 times 3x is 6x. So now I have a trinomial square. And that is going to factor down to x plus 3. It's a plus because b is positive. Quantity squared equals negative 5 plus 9 gives me a 4. Okay? Now I can go, after I completed the square, to my square root method. And that's square root and square root x plus 3 equals plus or minus 2. X equals 2 minus 3, x equals negative 2 minus 3. So my solution set is negative 1 and negative 5, right? Okay, change it to a trinomial square, factor it down, and solve with your square root method. Try this problem before you watch me do it. See if you can come up with your trinomial square. Okay. All right, I'm going to get rid of the 12. So I'm going to say x squared minus 12x equals 12. That's going over there. All right, then I'm going to take 12 divided by 2 and square it. And that's going to give me a 36. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Squared is 36. So that means I'm going to add 36 and 36. Okay? Perfect square, perfect square. Square root is 6. Square root is x. 2 times 6x is 12x. So I can say this factors to x minus 6 squared equals 12 plus 36 gives me a 48. All right, square root of both sides. So I've got x minus 6 equals plus or minus the square root of 48. Now, 48 is not a square number. 49 is, but 48 isn't. But it has a factor that is a square of 16. So I can take the square root of 48, and I can break that down to the square root of 16 times the square root of 3. So x minus 6 is equal to plus or minus 4 times the square root of 3. Okay, then it's just adding that 6 to both sides. and x is equal to plus or minus 4 times the square root of 3 plus 6. Okay? All right. Now, the gift of having all the different ways of solving a quadratic equation is because different equations, different methods are shorter and easier. So I know this is going to show up in your math lab, but I would never use completing a square on one that had fractions, on one that I didn't have an even b, and I don't have a 1 for a. But like I said, I know it's going to show up in your math lab, so I was going to go ahead and just do one of them. Steps aren't going to change. It's not a convenient way to do these when you have one that looks like this. Still the same thing though. There's my b. So I have to divide 3/4 divided by 2. And an easier way of doing that is to multiply by 1/2. And squared. So that gives me 3/8 squared, which is 9/64, right? All right, so x squared minus 3/4 x, and I'm moving that 27/64 to the other side because I don't have it. I want that trinomial square, plus 9/64 plus 9/64. Okay? All right, so this is a trinomial square. Perfect square, perfect square. Square root is not 3/8. Square root is x. 3/8 x doubled up is 3/4 x. So I have this as x minus 3/8 squared. Okay? It's a minus because my b is a negative. Equals, what about 36/64? Okay? All right, square root method, square root of both sides. So I have x minus 3/8 is equal to plus or minus 6/8. So adding the 3/8 to both sides. All right, so I have a positive 6/8 plus 3/8, a negative 6/8 plus 3/8. So that gives me 9/8 and negative 3/8 for my solution set. Okay. All right, I'm going to close that one.